Vietnam fought China for over 1,000 years, France for nearly 100, and the United States for almost 20. Vietnam lost millions of people. Vietnam still exists. This isn't a story about bravery or nationalism. It's about repeatable, strategic behavior. Vietnam survived because it consistently exploited four variables: geography, time, political will, the enemy's internal limits. Every empire ignored at least one of these. China didn't try to defeat Vietnam. It tried to replace it. From 111 BC, the Han Dynasty incorporated northern Vietnam into the Chinese imperial system. Vietnamese elites were governed by Chinese officials, Chinese law, and Confucian ideology. This wasn't military occupation alone. Chinese writing replaced local scripts. Confucian exams selected administrators. Vietnamese leaders were trained inside the Chinese system. China assumed administrative integration equals permanent control. China misjudged one thing: identity survives bureaucracy. Vietnamese elites used Chinese education tactically to understand imperial governance, to run local administration themselves, to organize resistance using the same state tools. Vietnam didn't reject Chinese influence. It selectively absorbed it while maintaining local kinship networks, language, and customs. This meant rebellion could re-emerge after centuries of rule. In 938 AD, Chinese naval forces entered the Bac Dong River to suppress rebellion. Vietnamese commander No Quyen exploited tidal mechanics. Wooden stakes were planted underwater. The fleet entered at high tide. At low tide, ships were immobilized. The Chinese fleet was destroyed. This ended major direct Chinese rule and began long-term Vietnamese independence. Vietnam survived China by learning how to exist next to a superpower without provoking annihilation. This pattern repeats later with Ming China, Qing China, modern China. Survival drick confrontation. France didn't underestimate Vietnam's will. It underestimated Vietnam's logistics. France invaded Vietnam starting 1858 and completed conquest by 1885. Vietnam was absorbed into French Indochina. Colonial control involved land seizures, forced labor, export-oriented plantations, French military garrisons. France assumed technological superiority, made resistance irrelevant. France fought a European-style war in a non-European environment. Key failure: dependence on fixed bases, long supply chains, limited control outside cities. Vietnamese forces avoided decisive battles and focused on disrupting supply lines, rural political organization, gradual force buildup. France kept winning engagements. It kept losing control. France chose Điện Biên Phủ to force a final battle. Why it failed? The base sat in a valley surrounded by hills. France relied entirely on air resupply. Vietnamese forces transported artillery by hand through jungle and mountains. Vietnamese artillery neutralized the airstrip. French forces were besieged for 56 days. On May 7, 1954, France surrendered. Vietnam survived France because it attacked political sustainability, not battlefield strength. France could fight. France could not justify staying. The U.S. never lost Vietnam militarily. It lost strategic coherence. By April 1969, the U.S. had approximately 543,000 troops in Vietnam. The objective? Prevent unification under communist leadership. Maintain South Vietnam as a separate state. The U.S. relied on air superiority, firepower, technological dominance. Vietnam relied on decentralized forces, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, long-term political mobilization. The U.S. measured success through quantitative metrics. Body counts, territory cleared, sorties flown. Vietnam measured success through time and legitimacy. Every year the war continued. U.S. domestic opposition increased. Political costs escalated. Strategic clarity eroded. Vietnam didn't need to win battles. It needed to avoid collapse. The Tet Offensive failed militarily, but succeeded strategically. Why? It contradicted U.S. claims of imminent victory. It shifted public opinion. It triggered political pressure for withdrawal. After Tet, U.S. strategy moved from escalation to exit management. Vietnam survived the U.S. because it aligned strategy with its own constraints, not the enemy's strengths. The U.S. had elections, media pressure, and finite patience. Vietnam did not. Vietnam survived 3 empires by doing the same thing every time. Avoid decisive defeat. Exploit geography. Extend timelines. Attack political will. This isn't romantic. It's procedural. Vietnam doesn't survive because it's heroic. Vietnam survives because it understands limits, especially the enemy's.